चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे आनन्दमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे. Namaste. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to start the talk by reading a few lines from Savitri. Something unknown, unreached, inscrutable, sent down the messages of its bodiless light, cast lightning flashes of a thought not ours, crossing the immobile silence of her mind. In its might of irresponsible sovereignty, it seized on speech to give those flamings shape, made beat the heart of wisdom in a word, and spoke the immortal things through mortal lips, or listening to the sages of the woods, in question and in answer broke from her high strange revealings impossible to men, something or someone secret and remote took hold of her body for his mystic use. Her mouth was seized to channel ineffable truths. Knowledge unthinkable found an utterance. Knowledge unthinkable found an utterance. Today's topic is conscious speech. And in fact, after reading these lines, I just felt just pausing, just soaking in these beautiful words, these mantric words. And it was very paradoxical that, I'm talking about speech, and when I just went through the whole thing, I felt like how can I talk? How can I talk on this beautiful topic? It itself is contradictory, the saying the right words and from the right aspiration. So, what is speech? So, saying the right words, not only the right words, from the right consciousness, the right time when it must be said, and in the right way. So in this 1 hour talk, we will be touching upon speech as an instrument of expression, and speech, the role of silence in speech. We will be talking about how can we control speech, what are some of the ways we can probably transform our speech into a conscious speech. So that's what we will be discussing. So starting with speech as an instrument of expression, Sri Aurobindo talks about how the different parts of our body has a purpose with respect to the different aspects of our nature. So for example, the head is the seat of the mind, the buddhi, and the lower part of the mouth, the chin, the throat, all this is connected with the externalized or the physical mind. So it's mind, but continuation of the mind. And here when the force descends, like when you are aspiring to transform the speech, the force is trying to work here predominantly to change the repetitive aspects of our mind, of our physical. When we are saying physical mind, interestingly, if you understand a little bit of the parts of the being, Sri Aurobindo talks about mind as a physical mind, vital mind, psychicized mind. So he explains and specifically synthesis of yoga, letters on yoga, he touches upon all of these in depth. So the particular aspect of physical mind is predominantly connected with something that is constantly repetitive. So the habits that the body is got, the thinking, that we are stuck in certain patterns. If you can analyze your own ways of responding, analyzing situations, so there could be certain traps that you're constantly getting into and difficult to come out of that repetition. So that's your physical mind, very resistant, and certain wrong mental habits, judging, like when it's not necessary, where certain negativity is coming into it, because the thought is like that, the mind's nature is getting into that sort. So these aspects, all of them become the part of the physical mind and the reflexes, and the physical mind is predominantly taking the information, associating, repeating the same patterns of analyzing the world. And predominantly when we are saying physical mind, it only relies on the external information. So right now all of you are listening to what I am saying. I am sitting here and this is there. So your mind, when your mind is focused on what is present in the external, as a part of the external world, in the external things, if your mind is only concentrating on that, that aspect is the physical mind. So the speech is an organ of the body that is connected to the physical mind or the externalized mind. And interestingly, this physical mind is also something which a lot of people, if you observe, you can see this part of them when they find it very difficult to believe something beyond what they can see. For example, if you say, I just felt like mother really helped me to come out of this particular situation. Now you know that, or you could feel a sense of guidance, a sense of presence, because you are able to move beyond the physical mind. But for somebody who is listening to you and not able to connect, they are like, hey, what are you talking? Like, how can you say it's the mother? It could be, your luck, it could be somebody helping you, it could be so and so. They are attributing it to the factors that are there in the external world. So our physical mind is only pertaining to the proofs that the mind can see in the external world. So therefore we understand that the speech and the senses, 5 senses of knowledge, are the instruments of the mind. So the senses, we receive the information, whatever is happening, like I said, this talk, you're able to listen to it with all your 5 senses, you're seeing and all of that. And as a reaction to this, you may, after the talk, you may come and talk to me. So the speech is more or less like the reaction to what the physical mind is catching and generating the output, you can say, like a reaction. And speech also comes from the throat center. And interestingly, like I said earlier, it is related to the level of consciousness from where it is guiding the speech, though it is the center is the throat. But you could be thinking from your mind at this level with all your confusions, judgments. There is also another aspect which is above your mind. You can also receive the knowledge. If you can just focus on the part above your mind, receiving that and taking it in and producing a speech in the form of writing or maybe a talk. So that is also another aspect where if one rises, wherever one thinks from, if one rises above the head, then thought takes place above the head and one can speak from there. That is to say, the direction of the speech is from there. So here I'll give you an example to make it more concrete. So to understand a little bit about Sri Aurobindo's life, and you know almost from the year 1910, 1912, is when he did have like major realizations, and from then on, whatever he was writing, it could be Arya, it could be part of synthesis of yoga, and so he himself like did mention that he was able to, it was not, the thinking was not happening at this level, at the mind, but it was almost that he would receive the knowledge and then he would put it on the paper. So almost like descending from above, not thinking in the usual sense. But there's a catch here. So why you and I are not able to do this? Because we are unable to silence this mind to see what is going to come from here. So the moment we are able to silence the mind that is constantly chattering, the mind that is talking all the time to us, we are not able to see what is coming from above the head. So Sri Aurobindo was able to silence the mind to get the ideas or whatever knowledge that he had to receive from above. Now, mother's style is also very interesting and very powerful, right? She would always say that, she would always speak, and she would say that the speech reflects the plane of consciousness that you're in. So whenever mother would talk to people, a lot of people did mention that how mother used to say things in a way that is like very powerful and specific. So her instructions, her guidelines, the other person would just get almost like drowned in the consciousness with which she would put forth those words. And like that sort of clarity and that sort of force, and even simple sentences she would utter or maybe just say would just silence the mind and also shift the consciousness of the person listening to what the mother is saying. So not only that she is able to reach that level of consciousness, but with her words, she's also able to shift the consciousness of the other person receiving it. And there would also be times when mother would not really speak much. She would just probably not really want to respond also, because she would not want to stoop down to a level where there is a mixed state of consciousness that the speech would not come out even appropriate, or it could distort the truth. So when she was because obviously she was very conscious of when she should say certain things, how much to say, when to not say. So that was the way in which she would interact with people. So now I will narrate to you a short story of Tenali Raman, of how interesting, importance of speech, and we can very much relate to this particular story. So Tenali Raman did get a dream, and in his dream, his teeth fell out, and he wanted to know what is the significance of this particular dream. So he kind of asked people to come up with interpretations. So the first person came, and he was pretty in a blunt way. He said that your family will die before you. So that was the interpretation that he gave of the dream. Now, of course, Tenali Raman was very hurt, and immediately he said that person had to be punished. And then there was another person who came up, and that person said, you will outlive all your relatives. And this made Tenali Raman, it helped, and he felt, okay, he got the answer and this person was rewarded. It was the same truth. If you understand the difference, your family will die before you, or saying that you will outlive all your relatives. So in the same truth, same probably different words, but completely different impact. So if we look at our own lives, you can just reflect. So many situations, our intention is very benign, right? you didn't want to hurt somebody, but when you actually spoke, it altogether came out in a different way, where that person got offended, the other person felt neglected, disrespected, so many quarrels, misunderstandings, right? So the way we sort of are able to process, first of all, understand what we want to say, and the consciousness, and the way we also frame it, all of this put together forms a part of the speech. Now, the role of silence is also very important in speech. So often, what mother says is, before you speak, write, act, do anything, just a few minutes of gathering, consecration. So you can think of it like a practice. You're going to have a client meeting, or you are upset with any of the family member. You want to share something. So just sit together, and this whole week for me was also like a delving deep into these practices as to what can be more effective. So when I had a disagreement with my partner also, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit, think and pray, aspire what exactly I have to say, so that this disagreement can be, it can be a little more clear as to what I wanted to express. And once I expressed, I felt at ease. And the whole thing kind of got resolved easily as well. So yeah, I think just a few minutes of silence, even in my own practice as a therapist. So when I see clients, the only thing I prayed, Mother, please make me say the right words. I don't want to influence somebody in a negative way, or in a way that is not helpful to them, nor like me being very egoistic. So allow me to just detach the I and just you take over. That simple prayer at least takes me off the guilt that I am there. So that is so if only people did remain a little quiet before speaking, acting or writing, much trouble could be avoided. And a lot of misunderstandings, bad feelings, everything could have been saved with a little amount of silence. And Sri Aurobindo says all speech and action comes prepared out of the eternal silence. So there's a lot of silence. Whatever we are talking is almost, it's like the birth every single second. So the moment we are like really becoming aware of this, imagine how conscious we are to be every minute or every second when we are opening our mouth. We are producing some words which is having an impact in the cosmic world. If were spoken only the words that needed to be spoken, the world would be a very silent place. So there are some people who just can't live without talking. All the time they have to say something, they have to put across their point, they have to prove themselves. And like mother mentions it, that it is a disability literally if you are not able to not stop talking. And in sadhana, there definitely will be a lot of times when it's very important to be withdrawn inside. And not really, because for somebody who's a very, very serious seeker, you may see a lot of people coming to the ashram also. You can just keep observing. They just want to be in that space, that withdrawn inside. They don't, for them, talking is like dispersing energy. So just being withdrawn and having and not wanting to externalize the consciousness, and and it is especially this chat for chat's sake tendency that has to be overcome. Very beautifully she says, because when we get out, when we just want to talk, no matter what, why, how, but that urge is there to just share something, say something. So that is, is there a scope where I may not probably want to do that because I want to be more concentrated for a little longer. When it's indispensable that you have to speak, you're thirsty or something, so you anyway have to say a few words, right? So, an example here I would like to give, when I had done my Vipassana experience, where everybody is supposed to mandatorily not talk. So initially, I had gone to this like I think 10 years back or 15 years back. So of course, my level of consciousness was very, very low. So it was very difficult to not talk, and I didn't really understand why it is important not to talk, versus a retreat that I attended recently in Pondicherry. So where I just felt like, okay, it's not necessary to talk. And there was a phenomenal difference in the way I was able to hold the energy within and go deeper when you're not really involved in talking. And then my phone was completely off for all the 3-4 days for the retreat, and very intentionally, and it felt very meaningful just to be to myself. So so it's important to be quiet, to be silent whenever we can, whenever we see the opportunities, especially after meditations. If we are able to remain in that silence and transfer that silence into our day-to-day life, I think that's what is all about sadhana. And Mahatma Gandhi, for example, also in his own life, when he practiced Satya, truth, as one of his core principles, he would also just pause before speaking, and he preferred not to say things, be quiet whenever instead of saying something that would give out a different meaning. So that is also one example. So then we move on to something called spiritual speech. So to understand all powerful in its simplicity, human speech at its highest merely attempts to recover by revelation and inspiration an absolute expression of truth which already exists in the infinite above our mental comprehension. So for us, or for anybody who is realized and who is more towards tending towards the spiritual speech, what Sri Aurobindo says is we have to get to the truth, the source of the truth. And he calls it the creative word. I think the mother says this, not Sri Aurobindo. The mother says, she calls it the creative word. The eternal truth is the origin of all speech and all thought. It is something which is eternal, and it is something it could be distorted. And how can a person actually receive this and manifest it? We will understand this a little more in detail. So, as a part of this, there is also a supramental word in which the higher knowledge, vision, or thought can clothe itself within us for expression. So the supramental word, how can it reach a person who is more in the sadhana? So probably we can talk about Sri Aurobindo, how he did receive it. So it's possible that at first it can come down as a word, as an adesha, as a vision, or as a vani, voice of the self or the Ishvara. So the person in silence may receive it in any of these forms. So you can probably recollect some of the adeshas that Sri Aurobindo did receive in the Alipur jail when he did hear, wait and see. That was one of the adeshas. And also he talks about how Uttarpara speech, he planned something that he wanted to say, and when he was there, it was just flowing. And also the Adesha that to leave Pondicherry, to leave for Pondicherry. So all of these is the example of a speech that is heard in silence. So once the word is received, the mother continues, it loses that separate character and becomes the normal form of the thought and in the form of an inner speech. And the supramental word manifests inwardly with a light, a power, a rhythm of thought, and a rhythm of inner sound that make it the natural and living body of the supramental thought and vision. And then it pours into the language, and then it is heard in the intuitive of supermind or the higher minds. And for somebody who is at the level where the person is, has really undergone the transformation, has made the body ready to receive it, then that person is able to receive it, and now the second part is transferring it either into speech or it could be into writing. So for this specifically, the parts of the physical consciousness have to be ready. It has to be prepared for the person, because a lot of people may receive a lot of things, but they may not have the capacity to retain and reproduce with the same intensity and the force. So a beautiful example for this in Sri Aurobindo's life is the Savitri. So if you understand the words in Savitri, they are not just words of any poem, but they're not just describing the truth, but they are carrying the truth with them. So you see that the level of consciousness with which Sri Aurobindo has written it, as you are reading it and when you are silent, you feel the energy. It's not just a poem that you read and you feel good, but it's more like you are able to receive the truth from those words. So for us to even compare and understand a little bit, a day-to-day example, think of the time, I'm not sure how many of you are into poetry. I can give my own example. I'm also not a poet, but just an example. So when I want to write something, I have done that couple of times where I want to write and then I sit, analyze a lot, come up with some rhyming words, do a lot of research, come up with some piece, okay, average. So there was a time when we had gone to Madhuban for a retreat, and every day I did wake up at 4 o'clock and sit for meditation, and throughout the day it was very calm and lot of peace, invocation. And there was a day when I just sat, just viewing the sunrise, and suddenly I felt like, okay, let me start, what I'm getting, I'm receiving, I just write, put it on paper, type it out on my phone. And that was when literally the words were flowing down and I felt extremely, like I'm not putting in effort, but it was just coming out, and almost like 10-12 lines, literally. There was a beautiful poem that at least I felt extremely meaningful to describe the experience that I did go through. So and then imagine the time when there was a fight. You can think about your own self, and then you sit down to write something. What kind of things come out versus when you meditate and for a prolonged time you are in the sadhana and when you are deeply silent and then you write something. So that could be the difference in which consciousness that you are able to produce something. And also with respect to Savitri, Sri Aurobindo was never happy with the first time what he wrote. His whole life, almost the second half of his life, he devoted in rewriting it again and again whenever he felt the level of consciousness with which he would receive kept increasing. So he kept refining, because he felt as he was receiving more and more, he felt the need to perfect it as as perfect as possible. So going on, words carry vibration. So as a part of speech also we need to understand each and every word that we speak does have an impact in the cosmic world, in the world that is there. So a small example of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he would never say anything negative or harsh because he always believed that words leave impressions on the mind and environment. And I'm sure all of you are aware of the vibrations that the Sanskrit chants, mantras, all of which create a lot of positive energy because those words were again carrying the truth, had the force to transform the energy whenever they are chanted with that sort of sanctity. And life itself is a rhythm of God. So, Pashyanti is evidently speech with the vision of truth. So, when somebody is able to have a vision of truth and able to talk about it, and Para is probably the revelatory and inspired speech. So, I just added these two things for a little clarity here. So, then we are slowly moving on to the control of speech. So here again I'll narrate a small story. So in a village there was a person who started spreading rumors, and there was a lot of disagreements, quarrels among people because of these wrong rumors, gossips. And after a while that person really felt bad that I shouldn't have done something like this, and I didn't know that it would lead to this much. And then he went to a sage and he told the sage that I have done something like this, can I undo it? Is there a way to undo it? And then the sage says, take this pillow, there was a pillow, tear it open into the wind, and then go back, collect everything and try to keep it back into the pillow. And then he said, that's impossible. In the same way, even what you have said, so is taking back your words. Once spoken, words cannot be fully retrieved. Right? And speech has irreversible consequences. The moment we look at this aspect of speech, that whatever we said, it just goes out into the world and you cannot take it back. And mother says, so basically we can go on and on and on talking, and the moment when we realize that and we should never speak ill of people or things, because she says it can go against the progress of divine realization of the world, and the vibration of the sound, the speech, can also have the power to bring the most material substance into contact with the thought. So what you can say may come true as well. And so therefore, when you say something bad, negative about somebody, something, think of the consequence. If not now, it can, because it can have the energy to materialize thought into reality. And so therefore we should not speak, except there's one exception: unless you have the power to withdraw this consequence, to undo what you have said. And of course that is something possible for somebody who is extremely realized, and even for somebody who have very, very strong inner life. It takes a really long time to refine the outer speech, and it's very difficult. And most human speech, you can just go on mechanically. If you analyze your own, from yesterday, what was it that I spoke? And maybe if you look at the whole week and month, you realize that we usually talk about the same things in the same way, and that goes on into like a repetitive mechanism. That's why I said it's more connected to the physical mind, externalizing mind. So how can we stop this, right? And even when once you get into this mechanical form of speech, your conscious mind is also withdrawing there. Your mind is not really wanting to be involved, but you are so used to this that you just go on continuing even whether you want to do it or not as well. So you have to try to inculcate, because this is something that is connecting to your subconscious level as well, that at that basic level, when you are able to invoke and say that I will allow only what my inner being wants to say, wants to consent, whenever my inner being gives me consent to say something, I am going to do it. So when you are able to get to that state, you will be able to make this shift. The mother says, the less one speaks of others, even to praise them, the better. Because it's very difficult to know exactly, first of all, what is happening in your own self. How is it that we are able to, also if we are able to think of judging somebody else, because we are not aware of what it is that's happening in our own self. It can, if not harmful, it is very foolish to say something about others, is also what Mother clearly says. And control of the speech is something which is very important aspect of our physical life. So you can think of it almost like a habit all of you have developed, right? In the morning we wake up, concentrate, maybe take a bath, brush, do puja. All of this is a part of your routine and part of the physical life that you lead. So controlling speech should definitely become a part of this physical life to transform it. And this is something that you can also, very fortunately see a result of as well. You can, towards the end of the talk, Mother also shares a little example of how we can start talking to reduce speech, in what way we have to do it. And in fact, we can measure how is it today I spoke, what is it that tomorrow. So very, very clearly we can progress. What is it that you are concentrating today and how much were you able to gain, and tomorrow how is it that you are able to control your speech. So it's very measurable and a part of the physical life, which also has an impact in the way the sadhana is taking place. It's very important for the right action to be done, because speech is something which is very evident, outspoken, people can hear, you can hear. So a lot of visibility is there when you start practicing this. So even half silence, just starting with that is something that can help you become mastery of your own difficulties in your character. So you could be somebody who's, an example, egoistic person. So by default, when somebody is sharing something, immediately you want to say something to prove yourself, to prove your worth. You want to add to, hey, I also did that, I also went here, I also had this experience. So it's coming definitely, from your ego. So at that time, if you are able to practice this half silence, you're able to refine that egoistic nature more and more. When you don't know what to say, in fact, not saying anything at those times, when you know that you're going to say something inappropriate, not saying anything at that time. So it can really help you refine your character, as well as any frictions, quarrels that you can have with people, misunderstandings can also really be controlled. So, basically not saying anything versus saying what is absolutely indispensable. So the mother says probably it's easier to just be silent all the time than actually saying the right words or saying the right speech. So, just again one example from the Mahabharata. Here, how speech can have really detrimental effects. So, in the Maya Sabha, when Duryodhana mistakes water for glass and falls in, Draupadi laughs and says, Andha ka putra andha. I think a little translation here. So the blind man's son is blind. So just this, I think somewhere it's mentioned. Again, there are controversies whether this really happened or did not happen. So let us keep the benefit of doubt, but just take an example for this purpose. Where, just saying something maybe as a part of mockery or just as a casual talk in this case, it was the biggest trigger for an entire war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So what we say, words can leave really deep scars than even actions sometimes. Somebody can do a wrong deed, but then when they say something wrong, it can really hurt somebody else so deep that the person really can never forget it throughout their life. So then, going forward, man is the first animal on earth to be able to use articulate words. And indeed, he is very proud of the capacity and exercises it without moderation or discernment. So we are so in fact fortunate that we are capable to say something that we want to say in the right way. But we are again so proud and use it very, very lightly. The world is deafened with the sound of his words, and sometimes one almost misses the harmonious silence of the plant kingdom. The silence is very beautiful if you are able to have the time to actually sit and observe and sit and experience the silence, give time for silence, right? So you can think of it throughout your day. Is there a particular time? It could just be when you're sipping your coffee, sipping your tea, reading, sitting for the newspaper. Like when you're just sitting and try to be quiet, silent for that 5-10 minutes and just see how it is, what impact it is having on your life at that particular point in time. What is it doing to you? Try to become more observant, and then slowly you may start to enjoy silence. Also, it becomes very evident when you go to functions. You can see so many people talking so many things, and if you are able to little withdraw and just be there, just looking at everybody and seeing why is it important perhaps to be silent and just not say things that are not important, right? And then mother gives like many examples of different people who have not very mentally strong. So somebody who's not very mentally strong, for them they are not able to think and speak. For them, while speaking itself, they are formulating their thoughts. So some of the aborigines, primitive people, uneducated people, cannot think unless they speak. So as they are speaking itself, they are able to process what they are saying and they are constantly refining. So they end up talking so much that is not really necessary. There are other set of people again whose mental power is weak, who do not even know what they want to say unless they say it. So in the first case, they probably did not know, without talking, they did not know what to say. Here, they don't even know how, or rather, how to make it clear what to say exactly unless they start saying. So they go on talking so much. You can observe this, I think, quite a lot when you meet people, have conversations. What is this person trying to say? They speak for half an hour and you can understand that, hey, I think it's just this one point they want to say, but they are, they're beating around the bush, and it's almost been half an hour, but I'm really not understanding what exactly they are trying to say. Such people who don't know what to say, and as they are talking, they're trying to, put across different things, and finally they're trying to refine and say the message. And for some people, they need to prepare beforehand to say it. I think somewhere, some of us may come into this category. And when you are asked to improvise, at that time you start to stutter and you don't know what to say because you have prepared for some, but you have to add a little more, say something meaningful, but again at that time you are not sure. So that is also one category. And there are other people who are born orators, who really know exactly what words to use, with what sort of power, and just the masters of the spoken word, where they spontaneously say the right things and say it well. So then she also goes on to talk about something called mental austerity. So mental austerity is when you are allowing yourself to talk the words that are exactly needed for it to be said. Right? So you have to process, purify in your mind before actually saying it out. So, and she also talks about the idle talk. So what is an idle talk is, a lot of times you observe somebody starts to do the work, there's another person that comes, you start to have a conversation, and then somebody else comes. So you're constantly involving in talking something or the other. Is it really needed at that point in time? Questionable. But you're so used to it that you want to keep chatting something which may or may not have purpose at all. So that's more predominantly like idle talk, just talking without absolutely like something that is not necessary. So this is something that definitely has to reduce in our day-to-day work. Mother says we have to make an effort to reduce the noise to a minimum. One realizes that many things are done better and faster in silence, and this helps to maintain one's inner peace and concentration. So just while doing something, maybe it can be cooking, it can be writing, or try to just allow yourself to not indulge, because speech is equal to dispersing your consciousness, externalizing your consciousness. So you're withdrawing your energy that way. So can I do it by containing my energy and being more focused? I think that's the question you can ask yourself, even in social life. Mother talks about how we are usually carried away by a lot of sensations, feelings, emotions. We are so succumbed and we just get carried away, and our words also come from those emotions, may not reflect what exactly we want to say. So if we are able to just be quiet, silent at that time, let the emotion pass, dissolve, and say something what needs to be said. A lot of quarrels, in fact psychological catastrophes, can be avoided because of uncontrolled speech. One should always control the words one speaks. Never allow one's tongue to be prompted by a movement of anger, violence, or temper. Allowing one's tongue to be used to project bad vibrations into the atmosphere. So we are saying something out of ill will, anger, temper. So imagine you yourself throwing out that poison into the world. And if you are living with others, try to not constantly keep talking, but let you and the other person enjoy that silence. Think of some friends who you probably don't meet regularly, but maybe once in years, but you know that you both of you really share a beautiful bond. So just being with them, you may spend an hour, but actually talk to the person only 20 minutes. What did you do for the rest of the time? You just enjoyed being in presence of the other person, where you are silent, the other person is silent. Maybe watching something, watching a plant, a tree, or an ocean, just there. So, Mother also talks about practicing such, cultivating the habit to not constantly say something and just enjoying that silence, having minimal words. So, in fact, the relationships can also be really, really fruitful if we are able to maintain this harmonious atmosphere. So, we will now talk about the effects of uncontrolled speech. So, one of the biggest effect, which I also did experience this, that we experience a fatigue after we speak for 20 minutes, half an hour. You feel so tired, exhausted. You did not do anything, but you just spoke. So talking unnecessarily tires the inner being. I think this is a very, very important revelationary aspect. Whenever you have to utter a word, you ask your inner being, is this necessary? Or can I just let it be? Because otherwise you are taxing your inner being, because the energy is being dispensed and it's squandering away. So one should not think that the value of spoken words depends on the nature of the subject or conversations. So it's not that there are people who talk very casually about spiritual topics as well. So your mother talks about somebody who is beginner in the path and still just starts talking so much, shares about a lot of different things. And later, once this person tries to understand and begins to read a lot to develop his or her own expertise, then the person understands that okay, so far I have been saying something from a very, very lower consciousness and from a very, very lower level of knowledge. And the more I'm reading, the more I understand that it's so difficult to talk for these 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a way that is more meaningful to the other person. Right? And then, very, very, this is a very true example of what I also faced. Like, I was into years of teaching, yet when I had to, give a talk in ashram, it was one of the biggest challenge for me, because you can teach with respect to a particular topic, but when you have to say something that what Sri Aurobindo and the mother have said in the right sense, without distorting it with your own sort of understanding, interpretation, it is a very, very concentrated, focused, and a job that requires a lot of opening and silencing, the opposite of what we usually do. For any other lecture, any other talk, you prepare more and you're anxious. But here it's more like you open and like not get stressed, but trust that this is going to be her work and not your work. So the more you're able to detach, the more you're able to perform, versus the opposite that usually happens in the other situations. And also one should never talk about spiritual experiences. That's another thing that mother talks about, because again you're diluting the experience by sharing it. You are minimizing the impact that it can cause, and it can also hamper the progress. But there could be a time when you want to share with a guru or somebody who is guiding you with a purpose of wanting to receive some explanation, understanding of a particular vision that you had, like a dream, an experience that you have. So keep this in mind whenever you feel like, and very interesting insight that I had in one of the retreats, which really changed my opinion towards having experiences. Today, for example, we all sit together in meditation for the last 2 minutes, and suddenly you feel like there's a lot of energy at the center of your heart. There's a lot of calmness pulling you deeper and deeper. And then, that's an experience that you have. So then automatically what happens, your mind starts to question. Is this something really, or am I imagining this? Is it happening really? Is it the mother, or is it just I'm having a heart pain? You could just, our mind can really distort the experience in different ways. So something that I have understood in the retreat, something that you're experiencing is something extremely personal to you, the more you trust your experience, the more you open to her light, her force, and her the understanding, the more it is truth for you. You don't have to get a proof, you don't have to get a verification, it's not necessary. The moment you're keeping this mental calculation aside and you're just sitting with the experience and maybe just open to asking the mothers to why this particular thing happened and just letting it be, not really mentalizing it. Any experience. I think that's how we can process these experiences rather than trying to distort it, talk about it. Hey, I had this. Hey, I had something like this. So you're more diluting it, and really, it's losing its essence. Yeah. So then we are moving to purification of speech. So crooked mind, crooked tongue, crooked heart. This comes out in speech that looks like honey but tastes like poison. So the moment our speech is not purified, it can be very, very offensive, it can be hurtful, unintentional, all sorts of disturbances can come with respect to this. And moving to the last part of the talk, where Mother talks about how we can all do one small practice. I suggest that every one of you should try, not for long, just for 1 hour a day, to say nothing but the absolutely indispensable words. Not one more, not one less. Take 1 hour of your life, the one which is most convenient for you, and during that time, observe yourself closely and say only the absolutely indispensable words. Now, obviously, we'll have a question. How do we know what is indispensable? So she's addressing that. At the outset, the first difficulty will be to know what is absolutely indispensable / important and what is not. It is already a study in itself, and every day you will do better. So there's no one answer. As you are dwelling in it, you will know what is important, what is not important. Next, you will see that so long as one says nothing, it is not difficult to remain absolutely silent. But as soon as you begin to speak, always or almost always you say 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 useless words which it was not at all necessary to say. It is only by perseverance and vigilance and a strong resolution that this control of impulse to speech can be done. But if the resolution is there, it can be done in a short time by the aid of the force behind. So with this, I want all of us to probably just close our eyes and just concentrate for a little while on the space just above your head, the silence, the peace that is there, ever present. And as if we are withdrawing the force from there and expelling it, can we all chant Om just about 5 times? Can we all just chant together Om with the concentration at above the head? And take a nice long deep breath. Whoa.